I'm Szabolcs, Janik, Operations Director of the MRI, and I will talk about today the situation at the Belarus-EU border. And these events started last summer, if we go back in time. Some words about the background of the situation. There was a presidential election held in Belarus in the summer of 2020, which was won, of course, by Mr. Lukashenko, which was a clear case of election fraud. Protests followed in the country, all across the country, which was followed by violent oppression by the regime. There were mass arrests. More than 35,000 people were arrested at that time, and many people left the country, actually. And if we proceed in time, we can go to May last year, when the regime forced on the ground a Ryanair flight with an opposition activist journalist on board, who was later arrested by the Lukashenko regime. And in the meantime, the EU responded with the well-known sanction policy in 5 rounds to date. These include travel bans, asset freezes for leading state officials of the Belarus regime, businessmen, companies, etc. You can see the numbers altogether. Nearly 200 individuals and nearly 20 legal entities were sanctioned. Furthermore, the planes from Belarus were banned from EU airspace and airports. And in addition, there were also some export bans imposed, freezing of loan disbursements to Belarus, for instance, by the European Investment Bank. All projects ongoing were suspended. And the result was a total loss of Lukashenko's remaining legitimacy in the West, as well as a political and economic isolation of the regime, which were very embarrassing for Lukashenko personally. And what was Lukashenko's response to all this? Well, an artificially generated migration crisis along its border with EU countries in order to exert pressure on the EU and the Western world. And in practice, this meant an import of more than 10,000 migrants, predominantly from the Middle East, Iraq, but also North and Sub-Saharan Africa and some South Asian countries. And we can describe this whole response as a cynical revenge with strategic concessions on the part of Lukashenko. And in order to demonstrate this, I brought you a quote from Lukashenko. "We will not hold anyone back. We are not their final destination after all. They are headed to the enlightened, warm, cozy Europe," which I think is a very, very cynical sentence from the president. How did this look like in practice, this Lukashenko model, let's say? First, migrants were recruited and informed in key sending regions, including Iraqi Kurdistan, for instance. Then they changed the legislation in Belarus in order to provide a visa for these people more easily than before. And when these people obtained visa, they could legally travel to the country, to Belarus, with commercial flights, just every one of us. They were later accommodated in the capital, Minsk, and they were transported to an EU border section. In the first time to Lithuanian border, Latvian border, and later to the Polish border. And these people were provided continued support in order to be able to cross the EU border illegally. These were carried out by the soldiers, the authorities who accompanied them along their way to the border. And we have to add that this meant pretty high profits for all the players involved, like state-owned companies, regime-affiliated businesses like travel agencies, etc. And this amount could reach up to $10,000 or even more per migrant, which is a huge amount of money. I've already touched up on the response by the EU, but what did these member states respond? For instance, in Lithuania, the first country to be heavily affected by the events, introduced a state of emergency in the border region of the country. They started to build a reception center for 1,000 people. There was also an increase in Frontex staff active in the country, in the border region. And most importantly, they decided to erect a fence of 500 kilometers, which mainly covers the whole border section with Belarus. And as for the statistics part, we could see more than 5,000 apprehensions in total, which is a very high number for this small Baltic country compared to previous year's data. Poland was another country highly affected by the Belarus crisis. A state of emergency was also introduced here, and more than 12,000 soldiers were deployed at the border in order to protect the Belarus-Poland border. And of course, the erection of a border fence was also decided here, which is, as you can see, shorter than the Lithuanian one, but still it's a very long, nearly 200 kilometers long fence. And Poland followed another tactics, and they kind of legalized pushbacks. They changed legislation in order to keep migrants out and preventing them from crossing their border illegally, which of course triggered harsh criticism on the side of human rights NGOs. And what made their situation even worse was the continuous provocation on the side of the Belarus authorities and soldiers. They used laser pointers through rocks at the Polish border guards, or even assisted migrants to break through the fence and get onto the EU side of the borders, which is I think crazy, and a clear attack on the sovereignty of Poland in this case. Here you can see some pictures. On the left you can see the construction works of the fence in Lithuania, as far as I can remember. And on the right there's something interesting. We found this text on the social media, and you can see how the Polish authorities informed those approaching the Polish border. The migrants received an automated text message on their phones with this text: "The Polish border is sealed. Belarus authorities told you lies. Go back to Minsk. Don't take any pills from Belarusian soldiers," because it was suspected that they drugged these people so they can be more easily transported to the border and kind of thrown onto the EU side. So I think this is crazy and insane. But the Polish authorities still try their best in order to keep these people out. And if you look at the academic part of the story, we can refer to, for instance, Kelly M. Greenhill, who discussed the weaponization of migrants to pursue strategic goals by international powers and countries. And also, Victor also referred to these examples, which I wrote in my slide: Morocco 2 times, Turkey in recent years. And you can see the most recent example of instrumentalizing migrants, which was Morocco last year, unleashing 8,000 migrants on Spain in retaliation for admitting Brahim Ghali, leader of Polisario Front, Morocco's rival in Western Sahara, for medical treatment in Madrid. So it was kind of a revenge step from the Moroccan government. And in this regard, we can call Lukashenko's action the most systematic and overt example of weaponizing migrants for strategic objectives. And who knows whether this story in Belarus and the eastern border of Europe is over. We will see. Thank you very much.